Welcome to the Startup of the Year podcast, where each episode we showcase exciting new companies from around the world. This podcast is produced by Established, creators of the Startup of the Year program. Established is focused on helping organizations with their innovation, startup, and communication strategies.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Startup of the Year podcast. I'm Frank Gruber, the co-founder of Established Ventures, and the team behind the Startup of the Year community and this very podcast. Thanks for being here. On this episode, we're going to hear a conversation I had with Jenn Lim during the Beyond Happypalooza event, which happened a few months ago. It feels like yesterday. It happened in October, but it was quite a blur of I hosted the event and had a number of great, amazing, inspirational speakers join us, including Adam Grant, Peter Diamandis, and Jenn Lim herself, and many, many others. I had a great time hosting. It was a lot of fun, and you're going to hear the conversation I had with Jenn Lim here shortly. If you're not familiar with Jenn, she's the co-founder and CEO of Delivering Happiness, which spun out of the book by Tony Hsieh, Delivering Happiness, and she wrote a new book. It's called Beyond Happiness: How Authentic Leaders Prioritize Purpose and People for Growth and Impact. You can grab a copy today out on Amazon or wherever books are sold. We'll drop a link in the show notes for you so you can find it more quickly. It's been a Wall Street Journal bestseller now for a number of weeks and is doing very well. It's a great book, and I really urge you to pick it up. Jenn is a longtime friend. I met her through a mutual friend, Tony Hsieh, who unfortunately passed away. We just passed his 1-year anniversary of his passing, and his 47th birthday would be in a few weeks here now. So, really somebody that we really looked to for inspiration, and had amazing vision for changing e-commerce and how to create communities and cities and things of that nature. So he's obviously greatly missed by many, and obviously will always be in our hearts. So I wanted to mention that, and obviously this interview is talking a little bit about Tony, I believe, and some other things. So I hope you enjoy it. But before we jump into the discussion, I wanted to share some exciting news about our Startup of the Year Summit. It's coming up here in person in Tampa Bay, Florida. Actually, not in Tampa Bay. It's actually, I correct myself. It's actually in Tampa, Florida. We're not doing things actually in the Bay. It's going to be in person, though, on January 25th through 27th of 2022. And our partner there is an Embark Collective. Embark Collective is an innovation hub down there and doing an amazing job helping startup founders up their game and get to the next level. It's also sponsored by ReliaQuest, which is, if you haven't heard about it yet, ReliaQuest is actually just recently was announced. They just raised another round of funding. They're actually at unicorn status, so you're going to probably want to check them out. And they're one of our top title sponsors of this event. We've got a great group of people coming down, a number of different activities, kind of our classic activities, because this is our awards for the end of the year. We're going to have 100 companies down there participating in a number of different things, including pitching a group of investors and mentors as they get, are looking for additional exposure and potentially recognition and a chance at potential investment, as well as the title of People's Choice, as well as Startup of the Year, which and a number of other awards that we can give out as well. And so there'll be 100 companies from all over the country participating from our community, early stage companies. Plus, we've got a great group of speakers, and we announced our first group of keynote speakers just recently. We've got Sarah Kunst from Cleo Capital. We've got Jeff Vinink, the owner of the back-to-back Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning. He's also, a visionary as well as when it comes to the development of Tampa. Spent a lot of time and energy and resources to make that happen with his group there in culmination or in actually cooperation with another group, but ultimately doing some great stuff down there and changing the way the live-work environment of the Water Street Tampa area. So pretty cool stuff happening down there, as well as Matt Conwell, who's from RareBreed VC. He's actually an alumni of the Startup of the Year program and community. He came in Baltimore and showed his company off years ago, and now he's back as a VC and doing great work. We've got Blake Hall from ID.me, another unicorn based out of DC, but ultimately just opened an office down in Tampa as well. And he's also an alum of Startup of the Year community, which is exciting. And he's going to come back and share some of his thoughts in his talk. And then we've got Jenn Lim from Delivering Happiness, and she's going to share some things about her new book. We've also got Amy Beckley, who's an alum as well. She's got a product that's out there called Proov and came through a few years ago and is doing great work. And so those are our first set of speakers. We've got more to come, so we're not going to leave it at that. But amazing group of people coming down, and we'd love to have you participate and be a part of it. So if you're interested in learning more and want to get on the list, just go to summit.startupofyear.com. Again, it's summit.startupofyear.com and sign up, and we'll get back to you soon and get you involved. All right, so let's jump into our chat with Jenn Lim.
But now we're going to talk a little bit more about the book. And I wanted to jump in, Jenn, and ask you, first of all, like, how do we get here? Like, for those, you mentioned this earlier, and we talked about it a little bit, but anyone that's new and just joining us, I'd love to have you share, how do we get here today with Beyond Happypalooza?
Yeah, this whole thing is just kind of whipped into shape in the last 4 weeks, which is kind of crazy to think because there's a lot of production that had to go into this. But But basically, I was pretty bummed that we couldn't do, we did this crazy bus tour for delivering happiness. Obviously, we can't do that right now because of COVID. So I really missed that human interaction and connection. And so I was talking to Peter Diamandis because I was just having conversations with and podcasters and et cetera. And he just brought it up in a way that's like, well, why don't you kind of do some Palooza type of thing? And so I was like, that's actually not a bad idea. And I just didn't realize that everyone I asked if they wanted to do an interview would say yes. So the Palooza just turned out and longer and longer. And what's also awesome is that even there's going to be more content coming after this because we couldn't fit everyone in one day. So there's more really cool interviews coming up out of this whole genesis of that one conversation. So we have
Peter. You heard it here first. Secret interviews that are going to be released at some point in the near future. That's exciting.
Yeah, I guess.
Can you share who any of them might be, or is that a secret?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I could share. There's going to be.
Suspense. It's up to you.
I'll share a couple. There's going to be Arthur Brooks, which is pretty exciting because he's, from the Atlantic and he has this whole happiness program on that end of things. So I love to hear his perspective. There's Guy Kawasaki, legendary Silicon Valley icon. He's going to be, and I'll stop there because then it would ruin all those surprises.
Awesome. That's great. So a couple more, and there's going to be others as well. So exciting stuff coming. I wanted to ask you, why did you write this book, Beyond Happiness?
Why did I write it? When it first sat down to write it, this was right before COVID. And it was all neatly laid out. The publisher signed on the contract. There was this outline, and it was just basically talking about the last 11 years of delivering happiness and sharing all these rich stories of people, individuals, and organizations, how they've been rippling their impact by using, positive psychology and scientific happiness. So I'm like, I just want people to know, anyone can do it. It's universally applicable. But then, of course, COVID happened, and then the sequence of events of, recession, social unrest, and of course, the passing of Tony at the end of the year. And then the why of the book just changed, not in terms of the content, but the why got so much bigger because it wasn't enough anymore just to share what was happiness and how that's worked in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So that's why I wanted to go beyond it and really explore the more, not just the highs, but also the lows, make it really holistic in terms of where we are in society today, because it's so much different, when we can't go back to the norm and be in this new abnorm. So that's why I wanted to push the agenda and question ourselves a little bit and ask ourselves, what is happiness and what might beyond be, and how that can be readily applied to our organization so that we are not just thinking about profits, but bringing that into essentially reinvesting into more meaningful lives. And we all had a lot of time to think about that over the last 18 plus months.
Absolutely. I'm curious, did you change the title? Was it always called Beyond Happiness, or did you have to change the title as well?
Yeah, the title changed probably about 50 times. The Google Doc just kept on getting longer and longer and longer every time something happened in the news. Right. But the original title that a publisher was really into was "It's Time to Love Work" with love in parentheses. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't feel right by the end, 2020, that there was something more.
it would, I mean, it makes sense, like, right? How, yeah, that makes sense, but I think you'd have to say love working from home.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
That
Something
would
of that nature might make more sense. So this, I think the new title fits better. And you mentioned writing first off, writing a book is hard. I know that.
From first-hand experience.
What's that?
From first-hand experience.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, but writing a book during a pandemic, during social unrest, while running a company, and then obviously with the death of my friend Tony Shea, how did you do that? Like that? How do you? I know you shared some of the stories and things in the book, but I mean that had to be extremely hard and emotional and draining. And I'm just curious, how did you get through it?
Oh wow, it was so. Everyone says day by day, taking it by day by day, but really for me it was hour by hour because I wasn't sure at one point if I could actually finish it or just do it justice, because I just didn't think I could try and process and write at the same time. Luckily, I have an amazing support team, friends, families, the book team, my company. That made the biggest difference. And I think that's also testament to just any form of loss and any form of loss that everyone in the world experienced over the course of the last 18 plus months. Mm-hmm. I think we're all processing it as a global society. So it really came back to that feeling of deep relationships, knowing that that's worth living for and worth fighting for, and really going through a daily resistance. There's a great book that my brother recommended right before I started writing it, which is the War of Art. And art, not just in writing form, but any form of art we do in life, which is every day. And he talks about our daily resistance that we have. We actually have to address it and sit with it and understand it. So I think everyone's going through it in some form or another. But by going through it, we do get that much stronger, as the cliche goes.
Absolutely. And you did it. I mean, you got it done, and it's a bestseller. So congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you. Thank you. I think there's just so many stories of people that have gone through crazy battles, and so that inspires me to know that we all can do it in some way, form, or another.
Yep. All right. So just so everyone watching is on the same page, and if they missed the beginning or any of the other discussions you've had, can you define happiness, and then maybe just jump in with like how everyone should go beyond that happiness?
Yeah, so we always base it back to the science and positive psychology. So according to that definition, because it's so subjective, right? Like people think, oh yeah, rainbows and unicorns, that kind of happiness does exist. That's more of the pleasure form. But number one is basically the authentic self and knowing our inherent disposition as a human being, as we were born. The second thing is the pleasure stuff, like going out and hanging, with your friends and, going to the pub or things that we can't do anymore so much. But the last thing is so that's hedonic, the hedonistic side of us, and then there's the humanistic side of us of happiness, which is more of an Aristotle thing, which is talking about the higher purpose side, or the self-actualization, as Maslow would call it. So those three components of number one, knowing who we are inherently, pleasures and the joys in our life in that short-term way, and then the long-term happiness of realizing that higher purpose. So knowing that is what's been described as happiness in the past, I wanted to really push it a bit further and kind of stretch it a little, because the world isn't the same anymore. And to have it, our definitions based in 2,000 years ago when Aristotle and Socrates were hanging out and chilling talking about happiness is not the same. So what can we do now to help define it for ourselves and ask ourselves the question, what might happiness, beyond happiness, mean for myself at work and in life? And knowing that, especially what we went through, that it's not just the highs, it really is understanding those lows and being gentle with ourselves and understanding that can be a form of happiness, knowing that every day is not going to be hunky-dory, but to be able to embrace both sides of that spectrum, or all sides of our spectrums, is where we land, and where we can be even beyond happiness, beyond happy, or beyond where we were before, at least.
No, that makes sense. And I work with I've started my own companies. I've worked with a lot of startups. That's the startup journey, right? The ups and the downs and the everyday, and it's the life journey. So that makes a lot of sense. One thing that I keep kind of thinking or going to in my mind, though, is going beyond happiness, focusing on legacy. Like, you're going to do all this stuff and there's the ups and downs, but if you take the long view, like down the road, it's like you're focusing on your legacy of what people maybe remember you by, or what impact you made. So I'm curious, is that how you're looking at it?
Yeah, and I love that question, because I made a really distinct point that in the book, that there's a legacy that we all, some people don't like that word, but it's just the truth. Like, people are known for what they're, like,
Right.
Tony has a legacy, Steve Jobs has a legacy. But what I really wanted to make it a point of is that we all can have a living legacy, so that people aren't thinking about us and reflecting about us after we're gone, but we can actually be living what we want to be known for right now. So one of the things I talk about is, instead of working on your resume or working on your next company and how to try to grow that, what about just just briefly working on your eulogy instead? For a moment, just thinking about, what is it that you want people to be known, or you want to be known for, and work towards that on a day-to-day basis. And that really reframes how we spend our time. And so that's why I'd rather think of our lives as a living and a loving legacy, not just one that we leave behind.
I like that. Living legacy is a living canvas for us to do whatever we need to fill that eulogy out, so that down the road, not now, but down the road, like 100 years from now, somebody will post it in some place, wherever they post those things these days. I don't even know where we read one of those anymore. Anyway, let's keep moving. I like the concept of greenhouses, and kind of tending to your greenhouses. And I think of gardening. I think of that, that jungle room that Tony used to have in his apartment in Las Vegas. And can you explain to me the importance of these greenhouses, and how you can use them?
Yeah, so I think what it all came from, actually, it's funny you bringing up the greenhouse that Tony had in Vegas, because he talked about greenhouses a lot, and as a leader, he felt that we should be nurturing and growing other greenhouses, but not having to be the tallest plant or the tree, etc. And I thought that was a beautiful, way to look at what we could be doing as leaders. But as part of my processing, everything happened in the last 18 months, I also had this bigger, and this is not, hugely revelatory, because it's not it's not news, but it's a reminder that we need to be nurturing our own greenhouse as we grow others. And knowing that, if we don't have our oxygen mask on first, it's all cliche, but it's really true. Like, how can we try and nurture others when we're not even replenished within ourselves? And I've seen it so much. And I have a few examples in the book where leaders, where you think that are doing amazingly well, CEOs, New York Times bestseller list, entrepreneurs, and, on paper, you would think, wow, we must have just a perfect life. And the reality is that they had to go through some dark shit, to put it bluntly, to get there. And I think by sharing those stories, I think it helps people realize that they can get through that too. And they actually sometimes need to get that to go head to head with those demons or shadow sides or things that we kind of swept under the rug over the years for whatever reason, our upbringing, our traumas, etc. So yeah, that's why the metaphor came up in being able to not just grow others, but it's amazing to see how much self-love and self-care, those words, are being used readily at C-level and board level and boardrooms in a way that we all should be considering it for ourselves too, at work and life.
All right, thanks so much, Jen. It's always fun to catch up, and really appreciated you pulling me in. And it's an honor to be a part of the event that you hosted back in October. And anytime you need me, I'm here for you. So great work, and congratulations on being a Wall Street Journal best-selling author. That's amazing, as you're out there changing the world with your efforts. All right, listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you found it interesting and something we shared interesting, please do share it with a friend. We really want to be helpful to anybody and believe in sharing. So sharing is caring. So get it out there and share it with somebody that you think would find it interesting or helpful. And speaking of sharing, I wanted to share one more thing before we go. I wanted to spread the word about one of our partners, Open Grants, because I think it's something listeners could really find helpful. Anyone out there looking for funding or looking for different options, Open Grants is a platform for searching this marketplace of non-dilutive U.S. funding for organizations. So if you're a startup or nonprofit or a grant writer or a foundation or even a government agency trying to find funding, you should check out Open Grants. Just go to opengrants.io/established, and you can do a free search and learn more about some of their efforts. So check it out. All right, well, that's it for this episode. Remember, if you're trying to get something going, or maybe you already have it going, today is the best day to keep it moving or get it started. Not tomorrow, not the next day. Just keep at it, keep iterating, and we'll be here with our community to help give you access to expert advice and resources that we think could help elevate your startup or effort to the next level. And you can join us today online as well if you go to soty.link/apply or just startupoftheyear.com/application. We hope you do join us, and thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I'm Frank Gruber, signing off, and wishing you the best of luck and all of the success you can have in your future ventures.
Thanks for listening to the Startup of the Year podcast. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll be back with another episode soon.